Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Blue Line Blast podcast. Jim Biringer, Matthew Blittner. We want to thank everybody who joined us for our live special on Trade Deadline Day. Alan created AP joined us as well. That was great times. Thank you again to everybody who joined us. Post trade deadline, man, there's a lot to talk about, Matthew.
Oh, there's a heck of a lot to talk about, Jim. I mean, there are teams that made moves, that didn't make moves, teams that should have done more, teams that maybe should have done less, teams that stood pat. It's a normal mishedas that there always is after a trade deadline. We saw two teams who didn't really do too much, and the Rangers and Devils play each other the day after. And Jim, that was I actually saw this comment on social media that someone was digging up an old Jack Hughes reference that instead, they followed up because they played Instagram hockey, Devils, Rangers, and then they followed that up with non-social media hockey against Detroit on Sunday. So yeah, that was certainly something. But Jim, I mean, I think the story of stories, Buffalo Sabres are in first place in the Atlantic Division, and hold on a second, it's March. It's not October, it's March.
No, it is March 10th, Buffalo Sabres, March 9th as this recording, sit first place in the Atlantic Division. Who would have thought the Buffalo Sabres would be here? I mean, I penciled them in at the beginning of the season. I'm not going to lie, probably everybody did. Missing the playoffs, 15 straight years. Here we go again. And same old Buffalo Sabres. And it looked like same old Buffalo Sabres at the beginning of the year, right? Looked like the same old Buffalo Sabres. Things weren't going to change. And then Kevin Adams gets fired. Jarmo Kekalainen comes in. He was there already as a consultant and advisor. Then this team takes off. They've been the hottest team in hockey since December. Sit in first place. They made some moves at the deadline. Logan Stanley's, Luke Shen, Sam Carrick, Tanner Pearson. Tanner Pearson just gets in under the wire, by the way, 3 p.m. deadline on Friday. That one came in late. That one was a late one, I heard. I think it just got in within like 10 seconds left till 3 o'clock. That one got in. But you look at it, Buffalo, nice little nucleus there. We wondered what was going to happen with Tage Thompson. Could they take that next step? They bring in Kesselring. They bring in Josh Stone on that J.J. Peterka trade. They bring in guys that had won a world championship together. Lindy Ruff was still there, and I was never sold on this hiring by Buffalo. Why are we going back? Why are we recycling? He's got this team playing really well. They're excelling. The goaltending is playing well. Is Alex Lyon a guy that you can trust in the playoffs? Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen too. Like they've been working here in Buffalo, and they're being rewarded. And I gotta say, I like it when the Buffalo Sabres are doing well.
No, it certainly is great. I mean, it's a great story. 14 years, longest record in NHL history, missing the playoffs. Almost makes New York Jets fans feel sympathetic for someone else. And that's hard to do.
Yeah, it is.
But before the season began, I mean, you touched on it. We all had Buffalo penciled in as being, either last place, second to last place in their division. Somewhere around that. Maybe sixth place in the Atlantic, but they weren't supposed to do anything. And for the first couple months, I mean, it didn't look like they were really. Let's call it for what it was. I know Barry Trotz, said that, when I interviewed him when Nashville came to New Jersey, that, he felt that Buffalo had been coming on shortly after Thanksgiving, even before they fired Adams. And I guess it's true if you look at the numbers, they were losing games in a better fashion, if that makes sense. They weren't non-competitive. They were starting competing better. I think we all were saying that, Lindy Ruff is going to get fired maybe either during the season or after the season. That was a popular preseason pitch. Jim, Lindy's not getting fired. He's one or two things is going to happen to Lindy Ruff at the end of the season. He's either signing a contract extension or he's moving upstairs by his own choice, not because he's going to be forced to. And
he might have some hardware that comes with him. Like the Jack Adams trophy might be coming with him if he moves upstairs.
At this point, he has to be the Jack Adams favorite. I mean, the only other person in the conversation in my mind really is Dan Hughes in Pittsburgh. And it's a two-horse race pretty much. because they're not really going to give it to Bednar in Colorado. Just
or Cooper down in Tampa, though he deserves it.
They win too much. And so, it's really, as you said, they fired Adams. And, I've heard of teams taking off after trading a player away who would become a distraction. I've heard of teams taking off after after firing a coach who was just no longer a fit. Those are normal things in sports. Firing a GM mid-season and a team goes off on a 10-game win streak? Jim, I think that might be a first.
Yeah, it's definitely a first. And I'm going to be honest, like, Kevin Adams should win the GM of the Year award. I'm going to be like, it's satire. He did build this team, right? Like, he's the one that made the JJ Peterka trade to bring in Kessel, Ring, and Doan. They have pieces there. Alex Tuck's there. He wants to remain there, right? Like, he didn't get moved at the deadline. They were going to move him. But it is very surprising he doesn't have a contract extension yet. For a guy who's from Syracuse, wants to be there, likes playing for the Buffalo Sabres. That's probably going to get done in the offseason. But Tage Thompson back a winner, right? Gold medal now at the World Championships, at the Olympics. Like I said, Kesselring's there. Guys are having big-time years. Jack Quinn's taking off. But the defensive side, I think, is really where I want to focus this, because I know a lot of people were very critical of Bo Byram. He only signed that 2-year extension. People still kind of had him on the way out. Yarmos fell in love with him. And, you see Powers taking the next step. Dahlin's taking the next step. Matthias Samuelson's taking the next step. All these guys that under the old regime, they got these contract extensions, and, they were much maligned because of the numbers, right? And there's a lot of guys having career seasons this year. So we'll see if they come back to earth next year. But it's good when the Buffalo Sabres are playing well and everybody's contributing. Like, Josh Stone's having an amazing year for this team. I think a lot of guys got rejuvenated. I don't know if they were tired of Kevin Adams. I think the words from Kevin Adams really hurt this franchise when it came to the no palm trees and the state tax and just little things along the way. And I think Terry Pagula as well, the owner, just didn't let the hockey department run the way it was supposed to, and getting hockey guys in there. He had some non-hockey guys in there. Like, nothing against Kevin Adams. He's probably good at his former position, but he was from the accounting department, head up to run an NHL franchise. And where's the confidence? Maybe not the confidence in the room, the players, because the moves that they were making. And I think a lot of it has to do with guys leaving and being successful elsewhere, and why they couldn't. And the question was, why couldn't they do it in Buffalo? And the fact they didn't move on from guys, brought some guys in. There was a belief. Like you said, before the firing, they were 3-0, and then they rattled up 7 more wins. And I believe at some point in January, they had won like 15 of 16 games.
Yep.
It was ridiculous with the Buffaloes. But the big thing is they're committed to playing the right way. Like, we talk about how Florida wins. We talk about how Tampa wins, the Colorados, all those teams committing to play. Well, there was no defense on Sunday. Forget it. That was like Big 12 defense in college football, 8-7. Coaches hate those games. But the fighting, guys being banged up, guys being cut. Lindy Ruff said post-game, that's his type of hockey, when guys are coming back, like, beat up a little bit. But there's an excitement in that room. There's an excitement to go to the building now. Fans are excited, and the players are feeding off that energy. And that's what we saw in the 90s and the 2000s with those young Buffalo Sabres teams. They were excited to go to that rink and play for that fan base.
Jim, I've got 3 points to make here, okay? Now, and I just want to finish off the Kevin Adams point first, so we can move on to the next bit of the Sabres analysis. As much as I agree with you that Kevin Adams deserves credit for, GM of the year, strictly because of the optics of how the team took off after as soon as he got fired. It wasn't 3 weeks after he got fired. It was immediately once he got fired. I question whether he ever gets another general manager job in the NHL. Now, just from the optics standpoint, who's going to hire him? They're going to be like, well, yeah, you built the team, but the team wasn't doing anything, and they took off immediately as soon as you were fired. So I wonder if he ever gets another GM job.
I don't think he'll ever get a GM job. I do think he'll probably get like a business side of hockey stuff again.
Yeah, something like that. But he might never ever get another general manager job in the National Hockey League.
No.
Second point I want to make, you were saying about how, coaches hate a type of game like that, but, at least Lindy Ruff was saying he likes hockey where, the guys come back all beaten, bruised up type of thing. Jim, I'm going to push back on that game against Tampa being a game that coaches on it. Yeah, maybe John Cooper hated it.
Yeah, he definitely hated it.
Sorry, he hated it. But because of how Buffalo has gone 14 straight years without making the playoffs, because they're a young team, they're not a veteran team who came together in free agency. They're a young team that is slowly starting, that's finally starting to blossom. I think, actually, that game, if they make the playoffs, which obviously at this point it looks like they will, if they go on a run, let's say second round, third round, something like that.
Which is not inconceivable.
Right. It's not inconceivable. They look back when they do their exit interviews or, even interviews next year, when they look back at the game that ignited them, they're not going to look back on the game that they played after Adams got fired. They're going to look back at that game saying, that's when we became a team. That's when we came together. And I know, again, as you said, coaches hate it when guys are not playing defense and it just becomes like pond hockey. And yes, that's all true. But when a team comes together and they fought, and it's not that they just fought to come back and, traded, they legitimately had a number of fights. They stood up for each other, and it wasn't just one time, Jim. There was, 4 fights in that game?
Easily. I mean, I think it reminded me of Battle of Florida. 112 penalty minutes.
I lost track even. Lindy Ruff, maybe he won't admit, although actually knowing Lindy how we do from his time at the Devil, he might actually admit it. That's the type of game that a coach of a young team that's finally emerging loves.
No, he did say it. He did say he loved it after the game, the way, but I know deep in the back of his mind, the way, like, I think he probably would have preferred it, maybe not get to 8-7. Well, but they won the game, so it doesn't matter.
I think he's okay with it for this one time because the team fought and came together in so many ways. That was their coming out party. That was their coming out party. And the last point I want to make, Jim, Tage Thompson's always been known as a very good player, even an excellent player. Could always shoot the puck, wicked, lethal shot. Then he goes to World Championships and wins. Okay. The perception around Tage Thompson became, his reputation became better. Then he goes and wins gold at the Olympics and had, it was a key piece. I wouldn't say he was one of the top 2 reasons why they won, but he was certainly one of the top players on the team. Jim, I think this is sort of his coming out party year. I mean, he's got, as of this recording, in 64 games, he's got 70 points, 34 goals, 36 assists. Pretty even right there. It's not like he's skewing one way over the other too much. He's truly becoming recognized as a superstar in this league now, and it's a sight to behold. Yeah.
I mean, look, the other night, go back to last week, like after we recorded ahead in the trade deadline, Jack Eichel returned with the Vegas Golden Knights. Like, Jack Eichel probably would have never been cheered in Buffalo ever again after what happened.
Nope.
He got cheered. It was good. I think full circle moment for him with Team USA and all those guys winning. Noah Hannafin as well with the gold medal. But I think Tage Thompson at the beginning of the year kind of was just like, called his team out. He put everybody on notice and say, hey, we're ready. We're here to win. We're here to play some hockey. We got to do things the right way. He's really developed into his leadership with this team. And I think everybody's followed suit. I think Owen Power's taken his next step. Rasmus Dahlin is really taking a step this year. Again, everybody questioned the 3-headed monster in net. Now you got UPL, got Alex Lyon. We know Alex Lyon can do it for a regular season. We've seen it with the Florida Panthers and things like that. But, he had to get pulled in that Boston series. And, then it was Sergei Bobrovsky time. And again, Buffalo's taking advantage of a division right now that, where the Florida Panthers are, the injuries to Barkov, the injuries to Marchand. We'll get all to that later. But they've taken advantage of a division that doesn't have the powerhouses that were there the last couple of years, the Torontos, the Bostons, Floridas. They've taken advantage of it. They've taken their step, and now they're in a playoff position. And I never expected them to be here. I always said, every hit I've done, I said, they're going to make believers out of me this year. They have.
Jim, I want to cap this off very succinctly.
Yep.
Do you believe in miracles? Yes. The Buffalo Sabres believe in miracles, and it's not even a miracle. It's something that they were building towards. And with that, Jim, we have to get to our special guest of the evening, who is waiting very patiently. We are going to be talking with Steve Whyno of the Associated Press, who's also the president of the Professional Hockey Writers Association. So we will be back with Steve Whyno and more Blue Line Blast podcast after this non-existent sponsor break. And there's the mugs. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back from our non-existent sponsor break. I'm Matthew Blittner. That's Jim Biringer. And we're joined now by our special guest of the evening, Steve Whyno from the Associated Press, also the president of the Professional Hockey Writers Association. Steve, welcome to the Blue Line Blast podcast.
Gentlemen, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Always a pleasure. So, Steve, we'll get started. The trade deadline, obviously, was on Friday. Rangers and Devils, two teams who were, there was a lot of questions. Are they going to do things? Are they not? Are they going to sell? What's your take on the results of both teams pretty much standing pat outside of a couple minor moves?
Let's go team by team here. And I think the Devils did the right thing, and I think the Rangers did the wrong thing, but I'm going to allow Chris Drury a little bit of grace on this one, that I do think for the Devils, with not making a sort of a panic move and trading Simone Nemec, I think is the right move for Tom Fitzgerald in terms of just, I know he wants to improve the forward group and all of that. And Dougie Hamilton, as much as his name's been out there, fellas, as you know, this was not the time to move that contract. And I think everybody knows, with that $7.4 million roster bonus coming for Dougie Hamilton on July 1, that's probably a July 2nd or after that moment on July 1st sort of trade for the Devils. So I think the sort of standing pat, what the Devils did, even getting Nick Bjugstad a little bit before that, makes a lot of sense. I do wonder if the Rangers, and our colleague Pierre LeBrun speculated this or mentioned this earlier as well, that maybe they missed their spot on Vincent Trocheck. And that's the fact that maybe Trocheck's value at he's 32 years old may never have been higher than coming off winning an Olympic gold medal, sort of the season he's had. He's probably not going to age well, given the kind of game, the style of game he plays. So I do wonder if Chris Drury and the Rangers missed the boat there. Now, if we're talking the first day of the draft or late in June, early July, and they get the sort of package that Chris Drury wanted, I'm going to eat my words and be wrong about this. But from a first impression standpoint, a second guessing, I'm going to second guess the Rangers not making that move. But I do like the Devils sort of sitting where they are.
I just want to follow up with that, Steve, on the Rangers side of things, because they put that letter out, right? And we've harped on this, Matt and I, on the Blue Line Blast podcast, about how this letter 2.0, you say fan favorites, and then you really only trade the UFAs and Sam Carrick. It kind of feels like everybody knew what the Rangers were this season, and that letter meant you should have traded Vincent Trocheck. You didn't. Now you may have some other guys that may have higher value come the draft, come free agency, that could be on the block as well. What do you think about other guys like Adam Fox, Lafreniere, along with Trocheck, that could be out the door?
Well, that's the huge question. And almost I think it's now at a crossroads for the Rangers, is now that they didn't trade Vincent Trocheck, you almost allow for the possibility of saying, let's keep him. Let's try to do this a little quicker than we expected. Maybe you win the draft lottery and have Stenberg or Gavin McKenna joining the Rangers and sort of change your thinking. I think keeping Trocheck does open up that option. But if you're Adam Fox and you see the possibility of a long-term rebuild, or at least a medium-term rebuild here, I am curious to see if Adam Fox is going to want out. And if that happens, it's going to be it's not minor surgery on this roster. It'll be major reconstructive surgery on this roster if Chris Drury does need to also trade Adam Fox.
Now, just sticking with the Rangers and bid moves, so far there's no hint that Igor Shesterkin wants out. In fact, he said that he likes it here in New York and all that. But if Fox, and again, big ifs all around, if Fox decides he wants to go, what would you put the odds at that Shesterkin within the next year or two, if he senses also it's going to be long rebuild, says, you know what, I want out too?
Not high. I think Igor Shesterkin is in this for the long term, just given his contractual status and how this is the first year of that 8-year contract. If that happens, look, if the Rangers at some point in the next 2 years have to move on from Adam Fox and from Igor Shesterkin, we're talking a San Jose Sharks style, Chicago Blackhawks style, tear everything down to the studs. Madison Square Garden will be half full for the next 5 years. I don't think there's anybody around the Rangers who envisions that kind of near-term future.
Yeah, now stay one more team here in the Metro Division with us. The Islanders, they bring in Braden Shen. Obviously, they had already gotten Carson Soucy, Andre Palat. Matthew Darsh, somewhat aggressive here, getting Schenn from St. Louis. I know they were connected to Robert Thomas, Jordan Kyrou, guys like that. What do you think of the move of Schenn coming in and then the extension of Pajot?
It's the perfect move, I think, for a GM. And a little bit about Detroit and going to get Justin Falk too, and a little bit of what Buffalo did. I think it's for a team that's in the mix. As a GM, you owe it to your team to say, we believe in you and we want to help you. So you don't want to totally remake a roster and do too many things and mess around with something that's working. But to go get Brayden Schenn, and I'm going to add the Andre Palat deal on there as well from a little bit earlier, shows from Matthew Darsh's standpoint a belief in a core led by Matthew Schaefer, coached by Patrick Waugh, that this is a team that can make the playoffs. And look, given how wide open the East is, guys, like it's not inconceivable with Ilya Sorokin in goal that this team can make a run through the Eastern Conference playoffs, and just the way they're constructed. The Pajot contract also is a nod to him that, hey, we're not getting Brayden Schenn to replace you. That this is an important addition of having Brayden Schenn there. They can move Cal Ritchie to the wing, but also saying to John Gabriel Pajot, we understand how important you've been to this team, and we want to have you here for the long term. Patrick Waugh, clearly maybe not as much a Jonathan Drought fan anymore. Part of that deal, I think a little bit also money has to do with that, but how much he trusts John Gabriel Pajot in those situations. And you add a Brayden Schenn guy with a Stanley Cup ring who's done it before, sort of takes a role of some of the other older players on that team where he can sort of guide the way. He doesn't have to be the captain. He doesn't have to be the guy, but he's sort of the little bit older in his career player to teach the Matthew Schaefers, the Cal Ritchies, and these players how to win at this level of hockey.
Now, Steve, just sticking on leadership there for a minute. Obviously, Brayden Schenn does not have to be, as you said, the captain of the Islanders. That's Anders Lee's job. But Lee is a pending unrestricted free agent. Matthew Darsh said after the trade deadline that, they do want to sit down and talk with him. What's your sense on either what it's going to take to get him to stay, or, are they potentially preparing to move on from their longtime captain here?
I think it's a wait and see approach for either side here, because depending on how this goes in the playoffs, Matthew Darsh is going. The good thing about Matthew Darsh actually is the fact that he doesn't come in with a whole lot of preconceived notions about what this team is, where he didn't necessarily build it. So if he looks in the playoffs and says Anders Lee is a step slow, maybe Anders Lee goes to free agency and sort of takes a smaller role somewhere else. But the wait and see approach is perfect for these sides right now, because there's certainly a respect there for Anders Lee and the organization of, we're going to come to the table here and have a conversation, but let's see how this goes down the stretch, the last 20 games of the season into the playoffs, and sort of what Anders Lee's role is on this team, because Brayden Schenn maybe is a guy who can either replace Anders Lee or add to his value on the team. I think it's I would say about a 75% chance he's back versus 25% chance that he's not back. I think there's enough of an ingrained thing there. And you guys know how sort of risk-averse hockey people are, that he knows what he likes on Long Island. He sort of fits into the system really well. But also Matthew Darsh comes from Julian Breezeball School, where he's not going to do it just out of loyalty. We saw what happened with Steven Stamkos and the Lightning a few years ago, where when a guy doesn't fit into the system, you're not going to be sort of we're just going to do this for the sake of everything you've done for us before. But there also is a little bit of if this guy fits in at the right price point, I do think Anders Lee will be back.
A similar situation then, which was shocking. 1:30 in the morning, John Carlson gets traded from the Washington Capitals to the Anaheim Ducks. And I know there was rumblings about a contract extension that was on the table, but then all of a sudden it was pulled, and they were like, we'll table it to the end of the season, we'll come back. But then out of nowhere, he gets traded to Anaheim, and it's really sent shockwaves through a Capitals locker room that I don't think expected it.
No, and I'm not rarely shocked by a trade in the NHL nowadays. That one shocked me. And I was in Washington last year at the draft, and I asked Chris Patrick about, have there been extension talks? Are you planning extension talks with John Carlson? And his answer of no, and we're not really talking about anything, sort of like it sort of raised the eyebrows a little bit of the player and the team don't see eye to eye on sort of the long-term future there. Still, I never thought John Carlson would play for another team. His wife is from Maryland. They have a house in Maryland. This is sort of the life that John Carlson's built here for the last 16, 17 years with the Washington Capitals. But it was an absolute stunner. And I guess obviously the Anaheim Ducks were not part of his no trade clause. It didn't seem like the team kept John Carlson and his camp in the loop with sort of the discussions they were having with other teams, which from an asset management standpoint made a lot of sense for Chris Patrick to get a first-round pick, an additional pick, to rent John Carlson out with the hope of maybe bringing him back. Now, the way things sort of went down, maybe some hard feelings along the way, I don't think John Carlson will return to the Capitals next season, but it'll be fascinating to see whether the Capitals fall apart in that locker room with sort of the feeling of losing John Carlson, or if they sort of rally around, you know what, like we love John, let him go win and have sort of Tom Wilson and Alex Ovechkin drive the bus and make the playoffs one last time, probably for Alex Ovechkin.
Well put there, Stephen. Just to move off the trade deadline a little bit, last night, obviously, you have the crazy game. Well, you had a couple of crazy games, starting with Colorado, but then, and of course, the main event of the night was Buffalo, Tampa. Just what was your take on the game? I mean, obviously, they're divisional rivals, but that's sort of been like a bit of a dormant rivalry. They haven't really been too heated. And then, they're dropping fights like it's four nations all over again. They're scoring 15 goals. Just what's your take on it and the season that Buffalo's having now?
It was crazy. And like even Brennan Hagel sort of ragdolling Rasmus Dahlin and having Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen going after him. It's certainly like, I know the NHL loves the rivalry format, the division format, because it helps kind of create rivalries for the playoffs. That game created a rivalry for this playoffs. This was a regular season game with 15 goals, just an insane coach's nightmare of a game where nobody's defending, the goalie can't make a stop, and sort of the fisticuffs and the tension, but like perfect time of year where you could envision these teams playing in the first or second round of the playoffs and being like, who's excited about Buffalo Tampa? Before yesterday, nobody. Now everyone's excited about Buffalo Tampa. And like you guys mentioned the Colorado Minnesota game too, where if Minnesota gets past Dallas, if that's the first round series, we kind of knew that Central Division is going to be must-see entertainment with those three teams, with how great Colorado's been, Dallas and Minnesota. Now we're seeing Buffalo coming out of its shell. The firing of Kevin Adams lit a fire under guys with Jarmo Kekalainen taking over, which I don't think anybody could have expected. A GM firing where there are no moves made at that time and no coach firing, changing a team's fortunes as much as it did. But ownership made the right move, brings in Jarmo Kekalainen, and he did in getting Luke Shen and getting Tanner Pearson and getting Sam Carrick. The same sort of thing I think Matthew Darche did with the Islanders is, we believe in you, go do something in the playoffs. And similarly, like you could envision absolutely the Buffalo Sabres making a run. It's so fun. I know Taylor Hall said this a few years ago when he signed in Buffalo on the 1-year contract as a free agent. That the NHL is better when the Buffalo Sabres are good. And I cannot agree with him any more than that. That's a market that is sort of starved for winning hockey. It's the longest playoff drought in NHL history at 14 years. I'm excited for my colleague John Whyno, friend Joe Yerdon, and sort of all the folks in Buffalo getting to see playoff hockey, the fans who've waited so long to see playoff hockey and maybe a couple rounds of it at least.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. Coming into the season, I didn't think they were going to make the playoffs. And the fact that they're sitting in first place right now is unbelievable. And I agree with those sentiments. Like when Buffalo's hockey is a hockey town, the fans are there, the building's electric. You saw it in that game. Speaking of being electric, I think another place that wants playoff hockey, the Detroit Red Wings, they were in New Jersey. That's a big win for them. Justin Falk fits into that lineup, the David Perron. Like you look at you mentioned the East. Let's stay in the Atlantic Division real quick. You have Buffalo, Montreal, Ottawa, Detroit, that group of teams that were always in that rebuild category. Now looking to take that next step. We see, Jake Sanderson's out week to week. That hurts for Ottawa. Out of those teams, who do you see that could make that run to maybe an Eastern Conference final? Take Buffalo out of it because you mentioned them already, but like out of that other group.
If John Gibson is back and healthy, it's the Detroit Red Wings just because of what he can do with that sort of team. And it's you can flip a coin here. I think the Tampa Bay Lightning should be the class of that division. And it took Toronto falling off. It took the Florida Panthers falling off to sort of open the door for the rest of these teams that you're right, have been knocking on the door this entire time of we're expecting them to take that leap. Ottawa makes the playoffs last year, loses in the first round. Montreal makes the playoffs, loses to Washington in the first round. That there's certainly elements of all of those teams that you could talk yourself into that. If I'm betting on anyone, it's the Red Wings. And like that Justin Falk contract trade, it didn't cost a whole lot in terms of current assets Sure, you're going to trade draft picks, all that, but you're taking a player in Justin Falk off the Blues' hands, who's in the middle of a career year, who sort of revitalized his play in St. Louis. And a year after, Dylan Larkin was very vocal and open about Steve Yzerman not making moves, and the Red Wings let down as a result after that. And to see them go get a David Perron, go get Justin Falk, it certainly shows that there's enough talent there, and you have Patrick Kane, the ability to take over a game. I know he's not in his prime anymore, but there's certainly talent there. Dylan Larkin sort of being the guy at the center of all of that to be able to make a deep playoff run.
Thanks for that great analysis, Steve. Before we let you go, one last thing. We got to combine your two worlds here, since you do cover football and you do cover hockey. The Rangers are struggling. The Devils are struggling. The Jets are struggling. The Giants are struggling. Of course, Jets and Giants had some, free agent moves and trades today. Your opinion, quickly, which team rebounds first to get back to the playoffs?
It's the New York Giants, and it starts with John Harbaugh and already having sort of the quarterback in place. I try to always have this conversation about the Rangers and the Devils of who do you think has a better next 3 to 5 years, and the Devils are better positioned at everywhere on the ice except for the most important position in goal to sort of get everything together. I think there's more of a core in place for them, but the Rangers have their goalie. For the Giants, you need to have your quarterback more than anything else. You have your quarterback, and then you have your coach. And John Harbaugh has won a Super Bowl with the Baltimore Ravens, bringing in Isaiah Likely and some other players from Baltimore where he was. It's really easy, and I say easy. We've seen a lot of NFL teams be able to flip the switch and go from 4-13 or 5-12 to making the playoffs right away. I don't know if I'm predicting that immediately for the Giants, but there's certainly the recipe is there and the ingredients are in place for the Giants to turn around way quicker than any of the local hockey teams.
Well put, Steve. Again, ladies and gentlemen, of course, it's been our chat with Steve Whyno from the Associated Press, and we'll be back with more Blue Line Blast podcast after this non-existent sponsor break. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back from our second non-existent sponsor break of the show. There's the mud, of course. We're still waiting, people. Come on. Someone.
Look at this. Look at this. Beautiful. Beautiful.
Yeah, beautiful mud. We just had a great hockey conversation with Steve Whyno of the Associated Press. I'm going to go ahead and say it. This is going to be my blast from the Blue Line, Jim. Top 3 guest segment in our 30-plus episodes here on the Blue Line Blast podcast as we are slowly approaching our 1-year anniversary.
Yes, 1-year anniversary will be around April 13th.
Yeah, slowly coming up 1 year. We started this show last year during the Devils-Carolina playoff series.
Which you were on the road for, by the way.
Yeah, I was down in Carolina. You're like, oh, yeah, let's get this started. I'm like, I don't have any equipment with me. I'm in the hotel room. I'm holding up my phone. I don't even have a tripod with me. I'm holding my phone. I think in the first episode, you can see the lampshade of the lamp
you can.
in the dimly lit hotel room, behind me as I'm standing there. But Jim, yeah, we're coming up on 1 year. Steve Whyno, one of our top guests. And now, Jim, we've got something to talk about.
We do. Florida Panthers. Look, Brad Marchand's going to miss Tuesday's game for the Panthers. He's been dealing with an injury for most of the season now. Happened probably a month or two before the Olympics. And he'd been in and out of the lineup and limited minutes for the Panthers and limited minutes for Team Canada, but still played and won a silver medal. But the team announced today, Paul Maurice said he's going to visit the doctor. They're going to see if surgery is required. They haven't said what the injury is. All they're going to say is lower upper body, so you can speculate to blue in the face. But there's a conspiracy theory going around because it started when one of the insiders of the game, Frank Saravalli, said that, by the way, that first-round pick that the Florida Panthers sent in that Seth Jones trade, along with Spencer Knight, is top 10 protected. Now everybody's saying, hey, wait a minute. This team that went to the 3 straight finals, won 2 straight cups, is going to be eligible to potentially have the number 1 overall pick. And now everybody's saying, oh, well, Brad Marchand's going to be done for the year, and he might be done for the year. You're going to find out if he needs surgery. Most likely 20-something games left. They're not going to, they're not going to blame him. But again, wait till the team announces it. But now the speculation is, hey, they're going to start load management, tanking, get a better position so the ping pong balls drop so they can get a top prospect and make sure it doesn't go to Chicago Blackhawks.
Well, I don't know that the Blackhawks are going to get the number 1 pick this year.
No.
because I believe there's something in the current CBA that forbids the team from getting the number one pick more than a certain number of times in X number of years. And since the Blackhawks already got it with Connor Bedard, I don't think they're eligible this year. I could be wrong.
I'd have to look it up. I'd have to look it up in the CBA.
Or at least I think that they may. I don't.
They may not be allowed to go to the first spot, but they could probably jump into the top 5.
Yeah. So, we'll see what happens there. But Jim, you want to talk about conspiracy theories? Well, I seem to recall that the year that Pittsburgh drafted Sidney Crosby, there was a conspiracy theory, a frozen envelope, that Crosby was a gift to Lemieux to save the Pittsburgh Penguins franchise. There were some conspiracy theories, if you want to stick in Pittsburgh, when Mario Lemieux was first being drafted. I
don't know if there was this conspiracy theory. I think there was some tanking going on.
There was tanking going on. There was, so obviously it wasn't the same format.
No, it was a different format because whoever, I believe at that time, if you finished last, you got the number 1 overall pick.
And they somehow lost out more than the Devils did.
And the Devils were bad at that time.
Right. They somehow lost out more by like 1 extra game or something like that.
Yeah.
Jim, all these conspiracy theories, they're fun for sports fans to discuss. And I mean, there's plenty more that you could obviously reference across all sports.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we actually have to have a bigger conversation about tanking. Now, it's not a problem in the NHL the way it is in the NBA. Oh. The NBA is literally, they're implementing new ruls. Like, they're implementing new rules on the fly because of how bad their tanking problem is.
Because of the low management.
Their commissioner, Adam Silver, has given multiple press conferences about it over the last month. NHL is nowhere near that problem.
No.
Now, the Professional Women's Hockey League has a thing called the Gold Plan, where it's pretty much, now there's multiple pieces to it, but pretty much like once you get eliminated, you accumulate points, and that's sort of how it works out. It's not like it's not that the worst team, it's not a lottery system, but even that has flaws in it. So, Jim, I want to ask you, because I have an idea, but I want to get your idea first. If you could come up with an anti-tanking solution, what would that be?
Man, that's a great question. I mean, I think the draft lottery is what the NHL does right now is really good, because I think it doesn't allow teams to just always bottom out with the rebuild, because you could be the last place team in the league and have the best odds, but sometimes the balls just don't bounce in your favor.
Right, but you still can't fall too far back.
Right, exactly. Like you've seen teams like take for Chicago, for instance, the year they got Bedard, right? They won games to get them in the third, and the balls bounced their way. I mean, me personally, what I would love to see is like a mini playoff for the bottom teams fighting it out for the number 1 pick. I would love that, but it's never going to happen because I don't know how many people would watch it, and it's got to be for TV. I mean, that's a really good question because like I said, the NHL does a pretty decent job with it, and they don't encourage load management, and the players are built in such a way, regardless of how bad their season's going, they want to be in the lineup.
Right, load management is not a problem in the NHL. Tanking is more of an issue in the NHL than load management. Like, there's no load management.
There's no load management. And I think the biggest issue is it comes down to what we've seen at the trade deadline is these teams constantly moving out top names they've signed in free agency or extended that, we have to get younger again. And I think that's the biggest issue for me.
Right. So, Jim, ever since this conversation started coming up, and even Mark Cuban weighed in on this for the NBA, I've come up with what I think is a bona fide solution that can be adopted across all sports: NFL, MLB, NHL, NBA. Okay. Now, the numbers obviously depend on each league because the number of games played obviously would have to be different. But here's how the plan would work, and it's a lot more simple than people might think. There's 82 games in an NHL season, soon to be 84 starting next year.
Yeah.
Games 1 through 41, and starting next year, games 1 through 42. Okay, teams are, whoever finished, this team's good, this team's bad, this team's all the way down at the bottom, this team's at the top of the division, whatever, doesn't matter. From game 42 on to game 84, whichever team that does not make the playoffs, because obviously you don't want to reward playoff teams with the number 1 pick, whichever team who does not make the playoffs that has the most points between games 42 and games 84, again, for starting next year, gets the number 1 pick. Because think about it. You can't try to tank for the first half of the year because you're not all of a sudden going to be able to turn your season around. And if you're a bad team, or even if you're a middling team, you're not going to want to sell off, because if you want the number 1 pick, guess what? You got to be good. You got to be good in order to make it, because you have to accumulate the most points in the second half of the season. You can't intentionally be a bad team because you'll get screwed. You have to try to win.
I like it. And here's what makes it even better. Makes the trade deadline more interesting.
Right, because look at it. A team, Chicago, last place, right?
Right, yeah.
They're going to want to get the number 1 pick. Well, how are they going to do that? If they're such a bad team, they're going to have to actually make hockey deals in order to try to improve. And guess what? If they improve enough to the point where they, get enough points to the point where they win the number 1 pick, well, now you're talking about actually being a good team, and you're adding a number 1 overall pick who's generally a pretty good talent, and going into the following year is potentially a playoff team.
I like this because guess what? It takes away. Now you probably could it would take away come the deadline all these quote unquote top 10 protected picks and top 5 protected picks. It's a first round pick. Like right. That's going.
And for a team, and for people who want to say, oh well, what if they're the team that's just middling enough and they win it, 3 straight years? All right, good for them.
Good for them. They figured out a way to accelerate their rebuild. They figured
out how to be a good team. But I got news for you. Remember the second caveat to it. It has to be a team that does not make the playoffs.
Right.
So if you're going to be a good team and you're going to add a number 1 pick, let's say 1 year, and then you're going to add it a second straight year potentially, there's no way you're missing the playoffs.
A third straight year. You better not be.
Right. There's no way that you're doing that because you would be too good.
That's very true. It takes away so many different factors that we have now, that where guys try to load the ping pong balls up to a point where they get the automatic first overall pick, which we've seen in the past that doesn't always work out that way.
No, it doesn't. And think about it. You have teams who, they want to get...
And it would make entertaining hockey, because how many years have we seen Chicago really be bad? San Jose really be bad? Like, teams have been really, really bad, and it's not entertaining hockey.
Right, it's not. And, look.
This could have helped the Coyotes, let's be honest.
The Coyotes?
When they were there, not the Utah Mammoth anymore before they moved. That could have helped the Phoenix Coyotes, Arizona Coyotes before they relocated.
So think about it, too. Teams like to trade away their pending unrestricted free agents. Yeah. Because they know that they're not going to be able to sign them. But, so one of two things now happens. Either you say, we want to be good because we want to win to get the number 1 pick. And so if we're going to get the number 1 pick, that's going to make us a good team. So maybe we should sign the guy.
Right.
Or if they're just, listen, we're not re-signing him. Like, it's time for divorce. Like, we're not re-signing him. Okay, you're going to trade him. But now all of a sudden, you're not going to get pennies on the dollar. And, maybe you even say, listen, we're going to hold on to him and we'll just trade his rights at the draft.
Yeah.
because we want to get the number one pick. It behooves you to want to keep your talent.
And it brings us back to the old free agent system where it wasn't, oh, we have to trade this guy because he's a pending unrestricted free agent. It was like back in the day during free agency, guys left teams. That was the way it was. Didn't matter whether the guy was UFA or not. If you were trying to win, you kept them. So and you found ways to get players. I really like this idea. I'm in favor of it.
And hold on, Jim. One last point that you and I haven't even touched on yet with this. You keep you've talked about, oh, well, it needs to be made for TV. People want to watch. Imagine you've got 4 teams who all have accumulated 60 points between games 42 and 83 going into the final day of the season. And 2 of them are paired off against each other and the other 2 are paired off against. Think about it.
Made for TV special.
Made for TV because you know that you can't afford to, first of all, you can't afford to lose the game.
No.
Secondly, you can't afford to even have the game go into overtime or a shootout because you've got to get the 2 points and you have to get the regulation win because remember, what's always a tiebreaker in the NHL?
Regulation wins.
Right. So people are going to be scoreboard watching to be like baseball back in 2011.
And I wonder in these games, I wonder you would pull
the goalie. Think about it.
That's what I was just thinking. You're reading my mind.
To make sure you win in regulation.
Well, we saw Tortorella do that when he was with Philly before he got moved on in that game. I think he was playing Washington or something. No, Detroit, something like that. He pulled the goalie because he thought he had a chance at the playoffs and didn't realize that Washington got in, so it didn't really matter. But yeah, you would make overtime more exciting. You would make the end of regulation more exciting. Changes the game. It really does.
You put them both on national television.
Oh, 100%.
No, let's say one's ESPN, one's TNT, unless you want to do a doubleheader on both. No, you would have to have both games start at the same exact time.
Yeah, so you put one on ESPN, one on TNT.
Right. Think about the ratings that would do for the NHL as the kickoff to the playoffs.
That would be amazing.
You don't even need a play-in tournament like what.
No, this is the play-in round. I told everybody this.
This will attract a lot more attention.
Right. It's a good idea. I like it. I'm going to endorse it. The Blue Line Blast podcast endorses this idea.
Commissioner Blittner for the day.
I love it.
Gary.
Come on, Gary. We know you can do it. Let's go. We know you can do it, Gary. I think that's a perfect way to end this episode. Guys, we're gonna be off for a little bit. April 13th is gonna be the next episode. Just some things that in between that have to happen.
I apologize. I have a job that requires me to work insane hours at March Madness, and as we all know, Selection Sunday is coming up in a few days. So yeah, it's not going to be fun.
No, but again, we appreciate everybody who's been with us through these 30+ episodes. Again, coming up on a year, and it'll probably be a year anniversary when we come back again. So perfect timing for everything. And guys, it's been the Blue Line Blast podcast. Jim Biringer and Matthew Blittner. Again, thanks to Stephen Whyno for joining us from the Associated Press. We'll be back April 13th. Take care and enjoy.